everyone. Welcome to the Spaminar, the Society of Prop Managers webinar series for live theater prop professionals. My name is Kat, and I'm a brand new member here at Spam, and I'm so excited to be moderating this seminar for you today. The Society of Props Managers, known as Spam, was formed in 1994 by a small group of prop professionals in the Midwest to address issues of common importance and to create parity with other production departments. Today, we are an association of 150 plus professionals, prop managers, and educators for not-for-profit producing organizations, opera companies, and educational institutions. We have built an international communication and support network that shares resources, information, solutions, and techniques, as well as safety information, continuing education, and stock. As with previous Spaminars, we're requesting pay-what-you-can donations to help support this programming and our annual grants for early career prop professionals. If you can afford to donate, links to donate will be in the chat. We truly appreciate giving anything that you can to help. We have enabled live transcriptions for this webinar. If you'd like to use them, click on the live transcript button on the bottom and then select show subtitle. Alternatively, you can click view full transcript to see it in the meeting side panel. I'm joined tonight by Spam members Lori Harrison and Lisa Schleckner to talk about how to present cards on stage as part of your production. Please feel free to share stories and ask any questions that you have in the chat, and we'll leave room at the end of the trade to share stories and pose our questions. Now let's put the pedal to the metal and shift into high gear. Lori and Lisa, I now hand the Zoom meeting over to you.
Thanks, Kat. I think we have a PowerPoint queued up. So if the host can screen share that, fantastic. So let me start by saying that the cars on stage that I have dealt with fall into two categories. In general, some of them need to be very maneuverable and drivable and controllable, and others really just need to kind of roll on and stop and either get winched off or in some other way do not need to be under their own power. And so from my experience, I haven't had to deal with gasoline powered engines in vehicles except to remove them. And the vehicles that I have had to put on stage that need acceleration and maneuverability, we've done with golf cart frames. If you could advance to the first slide, please. So this is a white model for a set for Florentine Opera Company called Elixir of Love, Elixir. And it has a truck that's pretty prominent. Next slide, please. It was a very tight fit getting a full-size truck onto the opera stage, but that is, in the end, what seemed like it worked best. From this drafting, we did have to adjust the trajectory a little bit. This is kind of the measurement of the vehicle that we were looking for. And then we went shopping. And we looked. And we looked some more. And we looked some more. And we finally found one in Wapaka. Nope, that wasn't it. That's it. The one in Wapaka was a beater. It was in our price range. You can see that it had a lot of cosmetic issues. And so we had a lot of body work to bang out, which we did in-house. We needed to replace that windshield piece, which we did in-house. We needed a different paint job, and we needed tires, and we needed to rehab the back end of it, which there was no bed on this. And that's okay, because we wanted a flat bed. Next slide, please. So this is it after we banged out the fender dents, after we replaced the windshield, um, and after we put a flatbed on it. And that is my um, long ago dog with his prosthetic, Hank. May he rest in peace. So we didn't take a lot of process shots of the renovation itself, but this is the end result. It was supposed to be a working farm truck. The passenger side window there in the door doesn't actually have a window, but this show was set in the Napa Valley. And so we decided that they didn't actually need a window that rolled up. Um, so that was the process we went through. We had a mechanic pull the engine and all of the gasoline related parts so that it not only saved weight, but it didn't present an environmental hazard with combustibles in an indoor theater, in an indoor touring venue. So the other thing to note about this process is that we needed to power this truck so that it rolled on and was able to be braked to a stop on a specific spike by an opera singer. And so the TD built a ramp off stage, and a bunch of our local 18 stagehands muscled it up on top of the ramp at pre-show. And then they gave it the old heave ho. And down it went, and we depended on that opera singer to steer straight and to brake to a stop when we needed that truck to stop without hitting anybody or any scenery. So that was a leap of faith, which worked out. We had a great chorister, and he was super jazzed about it, and he was kind of an auto guy. Then when we got it going again, there was a cable and a winch that drug it off stage from a stop when we started the exit scene. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so I guess we do have there we go. There's the production. Yeah, that's just the front. There's the first production photo. That was the first time we did the show at Florentine. I can't remember in the PowerPoint if there is a second shot of it. Is there? Yes. So we remounted the show in 2024, February of 2024. And they wanted to, the additional challenge was that the driver of the truck in this photo was an 11-year-old super who was too short to reach the brake pedal and also had never driven before because he was 11 years old. And so we ended up putting we ended up strapping blocks to his shoes because the director thought that would be amusing if he got out of the car and he was standing on these blocks, and then he could sit on the truck bed and take them off. And so that was an even bigger leap of faith, but man, this kid nailed it every single time. What we did do to decrease the velocity, in this version, we nixed the offstage right ramp, and we just had a bunch of local 18 stagehands push the truck from the wing and give it a heave ho so that it was a little slower emerging onto stage, and therefore a little less stressful for us all to watch the 11-year-old super try and brake to a stop on spike. And then going off stage, it turned into the wedding getaway car. So we transformed the flatbed into half a stake bed so that we could decorate it for the wedding. Yeah, so that is my experience with Elixir Elixir of Love, and our trusty Dodge pickup truck without any motor, but with brakes intact. I think that's it for that project. Do we have any questions about Elixir?
No questions currently.
Awesome. I think we move on to Lori Harrison, who This is an amazing project, y'all. San Francisco Opera stage is about twice the stage of Eline Hall at the Marcus Center for Performing Arts, where Florentine performs. So you're about to see a feast of vehicles.
So, Carmen was more aptly named than you can even imagine. This was a production that was directed by Calixto Bieto, and it had been done in Europe all over the place. English National Opera in Paris, in Barcelona, in Oslo, and we theoretically could have just rented one of their sets, and which is nothing but cars, and had them sent over, but they are all busy, like every single one of the productions, and there were like 3 that sort of tour around Europe. And so we had to make our own, and we didn't have a whole lot of time by the time we decided to do that. And even better, the director of production had suddenly gotten this brainstorm that maybe an American audience wouldn't quite understand what the problems between the border between Spain and Morocco were, but we sure understand the problems that we have in our own border. So he tried to change it to being all American cars instead of all Mercedes Benzes. And finally, the director nixed that, but that took a good, several weeks off of the amount of time to be able to get this moving. So we had, as I recall, it was a period of months. It was maybe like 4 or 5 months to come up with 6 cars, one of which had to drive and one of which had to be a convertible, and which had to have a lot of work done to them. So when Lisa talked about buying, well, that started out being quite an adventure. And of course, we looked for first of all, I wanted to kind of figure out why. I really had to kind of learn myself about the issues between Spain and Morocco. So I'm going to do a little bit of sharing to find out that, in fact, let me make sure I'm in the right place here. Why did they have that issue? So in that research, oh boy, yeah, here we go. This is Morocco, like now in current times. These 3 slides are what Morocco is like, and in fact, there are lots and lots of essentially gypsies that are crossing the border all the time and smuggling things across the border, and that's what this was taken from. Whether American audiences would ever understand that or do anything with it is another matter entirely, but I was able to figure that out. One of the things that I've learned, stop share, is that when you don't know a whole lot about something yourself, you have to surround yourself with people that do know a whole lot about it. And so, I did the Craigslist and I went to all kinds of used car lots and stuff like that. I also called the local Mercedes club, and the local Mercedes club was really excited about this project. And they sent me to a woman who has a shop that deals with that era of Mercedes. And she was thrilled to pieces. We paid them a lot of money, but she took it on so that I could sort of tell her the ones that I was finding, but she was finding them all over the state, and she was willing to go. And she had a garage, so she had a way to pick them up and a garage to take them to. She had a mechanic who was a Polish mechanic who specialized in 1, 2, 3. That's what they're called, that style of Mercedes. And so I paid them, I think it was $3,000 per car to get us shells. They took the motors out, they took the transmissions out, they're still really heavy. You take that stuff out and they are still not light. Uh, so we had to get them into the rehearsal hall. That was a lot of fun. I'm going to share again because I've got a picture of our rehearsal hall. To figure out how to do this. There we go. That's our rehearsal hall. We had to somehow get the cars into the rehearsal hall. So we had to come up with, you know, our trucking company that usually just trucks the orchestra and props into the rehearsal halls. We had to get stake beds which could carry the cars back and forth to the rehearsal hall, and figure out through the directing what gets put onto each one, because this is a whole community of people who are traveling. They are sneaking in the dead of night. Now, this scene that had the 5 cars in it, we could have stagehands in costume pushing them, because the story goes that they're sneaking across the border and the engine makes too much noise. And so and it really worked with the music. It was pretty amazing. The other scene in which the car had to drive carrying a lot of stuff, and then they set up a party and everybody gathers around it and they jump up and down on it. That was a different story. So that's when you surround yourself with people that know something about electric motors. So one of the guys on our electrics crew also is a car guy, and he's the one that put an electric motor into this car. We also had a guy who was really good at just cutting things up and putting them back together again. And that's how he came up with the convertible, because Mercedes convertibles of that era are really expensive, even the crappy ones that need their motors taken out. Well, this isn't going to work very well. So we actually cut the top off of one and made a convertible out of it. We learned, I can't tell you how much we learned doing this. Someone asked about car jacks. We could not have survived this show without car jacks. We started buying car jacks from anybody that would sell them. So we were like, every Craigslist offer of car jacks, we would, even if they only had one, we would start putting them together. We found the kinds of little dollies that you can get at Harbor Freight that we could get cars onto, because, and then for the most part, the other ones we would steer and push. We'd have someone sitting and they'd steer them and we just sort of push them around. The people at the wheel of the cars getting them to the spikes were choristers, but they worked with our stagehands in costume. So we had a lot of practice. We named them all, so we knew what they needed to do. One of our other great moments with the, let's see. I'm really online illiterate. They had their big fight. The big Carmen fight was leaping from car to car. Final dress rehearsal, they leaped from car to car and put their foot through a windshield. And we had to come up with a windshield for these period cars in 0 time. So you can see how they're spread out here. They were just close enough that you could jump around from car to car with knives and stage this fight. Because of that scene, and because of the scene in the party car in which they were leaping with the entire chorus on it, we had to strengthen the cars. So each one, we put plywood underneath the lids and underneath the tops and filled them with spray foam. And that gave it some structure inside. So between the plywood and the foam that we sprayed in there, it made it strong enough to tolerate. Going back to having to get a windshield, somehow we were lucky. I mean, we called every Mercedes dealer, every single, they're very, very rare and they're very, very hard to get. So we bought more than, like all of them that we found, we bought and kind of kept them with the cars. The show was really successful with everybody, especially the Mercedes-Benz Club. They sent all their members to see it who had never seen an opera before. It went really well. The only people who didn't like this production were the board, the opera board. They didn't like it not only because the characters of these gypsies that are, driving around in these cars and storing their stuff, they're, kind of distasteful in a modern sort of way. And there was also, like, they had, scenes of people going behind the cars and giving each other blowjobs and things like that that were unpopular with our board level audiences. They also didn't like the nude scene. There was a ballet dancer that did a completely nude ballet in front of the bull, and it was brilliant. And they didn't like that. And so they didn't want to do that show. So they got a new Carmen. We have a new Carmen. We're doing it now. We've done it a couple times. And the only car in that new Carmen is, let's see if I can find it. Well, it's a horse. That's our vehicle in the new Carmen. So it has its own set of problems, but that's our new Carmen. Any questions? Because we've really, really, really learned a lot. And anybody that's venturing into using cars may be able to learn from some of what we learned.
We have one from Patrick that is, have you ever borrowed cars for shows, and how would you protect the company's liability?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one. Lisa, you want to answer first, and then I'll show you their other borrowed car?
I have not borrowed cars, but I've borrowed 3 motorcycles and a vintage Vespa scooter. All of those borrows, we, called our insurance company and we took out a, rider, and then we controlled tightly the environment for each of those motorized bikes slash scooters. So access and security to those areas where they're stored is key, as is management buy-in so that they don't blink when you ask for a rather large certificate of insurance from our underwriters. Yeah, those are the 2 important things. And then just common sense staging, right? You don't, if the director wants to, have somebody come up and key the motorcycle and scratch it to get the character irritated, you get to say no to that. And you get to say, no, we have this relationship with this Triumph dealer and we need to preserve it. So those are my 3 suggestions for limiting the company's liability.
We rented, we borrowed from a board member or a friend of a board member a like $1 million Jaguar, and it was a nightmare. We were terrified of every step of the way. I don't know how to get out of this. Yeah, that's not gonna work. Okay, it was like a mint condition Jaguar convertible cherry red that they had to drive away on at the end of the show. So we did something that you'll see later on in our slideshow. We kept it on a sled wagon, a service wagon, at the far upstage of the stage, and we never touched it. We made them use their car company to deliver it. They delivered it onto that wagon. The only time we touched it was with like cloths. We had a cover, we had it strapped down. Lisa was right about having to get not only motors, but anything that has any fuel anywhere near it out of a vehicle. And of course, we couldn't do that with somebody's $1 million Jaguar convertible. And so they had to bag, they had to have their people actually bag the engine and the gas tanks. It was terrifying. I couldn't wait until it had gone away. So yeah, we have motorcycle stories too, but those can wait till the end if there's time.
So Lori, can you talk a little more about where and how you put in the plywood and the foam for the roof standing and disco dancing up there?
Yeah, there's all kinds of, I wish we had process for that, photos or anything. Inside of cars, there are all kinds of connecting points. And so finding anything that's flat. So we kind of just bolted on 3/4 inch plywood. And even then, you know, it would hit it, which is why we filled it up with hard foam. We did 2-part foam and we blasted it in, and it like leaked out all over the place. We kind of tried to hold it in so that it would be as dense as possible. We did, after we learned the hard way about the windshields, we took all glass and either opened the windows and kept them open, which made some sense for, you know, dramaturgically speaking. But anything that we couldn't do, we used vinyl, you know, clear vinyl, so that if it did break, it wouldn't wreck the show. I mean, you know, you can't go out and sweep and there are still people on the floor afterwards. And so that taught us a lesson, was to keep the glass encased, because you just don't know what's going to happen. The plywood, I have to say, we winged it. Each car was a little bit different, and we had to find where we could put something solid. It was a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean that the added physical dimension of having to dance on top of the cars, like it's pretty straightforward to put a pickup truck on stage. But to dance on the top of a car roof, most cars aren't built to accept that. Like there's a reason why the roof always dents when you see a rollover accident. And so, like we often are asked to do in props, we're asked to do something that in reality we would not be able to do in real life. And we have to make it look plausible. So yet again. Could we go back and make sure we've hit all of Lori's slides for Carmen in the PowerPoint? I want to make sure we looked at all of those. That one.
I think that's all that we did.
Yep. So the next slide is a slide, a production shot for the sort of performance area that lived on top of the truck bed for 110 in the shade. And sadly, that was in 1990-91 season. And that is the only photograph in anybody's archives that I could find. So I have no process shots. I have no shots of the entire vehicle, but this was on an extended golf cart. And it was assembled by, the golf cart had to drive in to make its entrance on stage, piloted by the guy in the picture, Norman Moses. So the performer, and he, while singing, and a costume stagehand unfolded the stage from the back of the golf cart. And we took our inspiration from how cranes are stabilized. So the one piece of deck unfolded and then had legs 6x6s that hinged down from there, and those hit the ground. And then he erected and assembled all of the rest of this equipment. The banner in back really was quite tall when it got over to the cab end, which you can't see. And then, of course, it all had to reverse itself when he was ready to pack up his act and move on at the end of the play. Lori will show you a better version, an opera-sized version of that a little later on. Can we take a look at the Utah Shakespeare Festival Ragtime? So this is a shot from Ben Holman, who couldn't be with us tonight. But what he says about this is that it's a Ragtime Model T, and it was built on a golf cart frame that he extended. Their shop welded Model T wheel hubs on top of the golf cart hubs, and they used a fiberglass Model T Roadster shell over the whole thing. That would have been awesome for me to have access to when I did 110 The Shade. I built a form and I draped it with a material that probably Lori and I are the only two people old enough to remember using, a material called Celastic. It's a fabric that is pliable in a kind of a canvas weight, but when you dip it in acetone, it becomes super drapey. So we dipped the whole bunch of Celastic in acetone, draped it over the frame, and made basically what Ben here in this photo has as a fiberglass frame. Celastic has been discontinued because it's so unbelievably toxic, both to your liver, your kidneys, your brain, and your lungs. So Ben claims that this golf cart with the fiberglass shell on it drove, but it did have a terrible turning radius because the wheels rubbed against the hood. So backstage, the crew had to jack it up and put it on car dollies to turn it around and then get it back on its wheels for the entrance from stage right from the opposite stage. The actor playing the driver had done the role 4 times and had never had a drivable car before. So that was a pretty thrilling thing for him. Next slide, please. So this slide, the next 3 slides are from Nice People Dancing to Good Country Music. The designer is Andrew Gottschall, also at Utah. And this is a 1980 Ford pickup truck. They pulled the engine and the transmission, and they used car dollies to get it on and off stage at intermission. So again, trucks are pretty easy if they don't actually need to do a whole bunch of tricks. You can advance. Yep, there it is, full stage. And there should be one more shot of the back. Yeah. And then this show shot is from Megan Fremantle from Houston Grand Opera in 1986. This is Ariadne of Naxos in 1986. Do we have Megan on the Zoom? I hope.
She actually was not able to join us. Sorry.
Bummer.
Yeah.
Well, we'll page through her photos because they are absolutely amazing. And this is another photo from a Cav Pag in 2008 from Houston Grand. And this photo from again from Megan is a little exemplary of how rough the platform terrain was, and how they had to drive on not only with folks in back, but then this unfolded, I believe. Lori, do you have a better series of shots of your Cav Pag to contrast with this?
I'm gonna share that.
Let's do that.
That should be this. We had a really old Garby truck. There it is in its glory. And that was dramaturgically, they had it arranged it so that it had broken down. So you could see it a little, we had a little model of it that was being carried on a stick behind the hills that the villagers could see, and then it stopped, and then it sort of sputtered, and then it took some time, and then it made sense, of course, for the crew to then be pushing it in. But it was a mess. That was inside the motor for it. But they then set up a whole stage. So it was filled with platforms and sawhorses and flats, and the crew would push it on, and then they'd set up this whole stage to be performed on. That was it loaded up, and that was it set up.
So for anybody who wants to do a Pagliacci, call Lori and Megan, because you almost always have to have some sort of traveling troupe. And the question is always, what do they travel in? And how do they turn it into their performance space? Much like 110 in the Shade, same sort of deal. Can we take a look at the Marriage of Figaro from Houston Grand? Yeah, so I don't know what the story is here, but I think that they winched this car across the stage. I don't know that this was powered on its own, but it's a beautiful little sports car. And when we answer the question of, you know, what do we do to limit liability, I actually thought of Megan here, because there's a lot of interaction with this sports car, and I'm not sure if they owned it. I think they may have bought it for the show, because they did it in 2016 and again in 2023, and they used the same car. Opera money is crazy money, you guys. Get a job in opera. You'll never regret it. Or you probably won't regret it. Can we see the Barber of Seville? Yeah. So this features not only a fabulous 50s, I think that might be a Gran Torino, a Chevy of some sort, and then a little Vespa, very cute.
It's the Buick Wildcat.
The Buick Wildcat. Oh my God, thank you. I don't know. I'm not a car person. So I can only imagine how difficult it was to get that. And I bet that she leveraged her contacts in the Houston car, collectible car community to get both of those. Let's take a look at, yeah. So this, I think, is, I hope this is slide 27. This is Mother Courage, Shakespeare in the Park. This is a
No, this might be Dead Man Walking from.
Oh, is this Dead Man Walking?
It might.
Oh yeah, so this is Mother Courage. Yeah, so 26 was Dead Man Walking. That was another photo for Megan. So this is Mother Courage, Shakespeare in the Park, 2005. This is New York City. Sean McCardle bought a 49 Jeep Willie on eBay from Canada, and he did some surgery and married it to a golf cart. So again, the through line here is, if you're using vehicles, gasoline powered vehicles indoors on stage, you need to remove or somehow shield all of the combustible parts. And in this case, he just put the back end of it onto a golf cart, and then took the front end chassis and grill, as you can see, put that end onto a golf cart, and then battery operated the headlights, and away he went. So that's pretty fun.
I do have another Jeep that I can show.
Yeah, do it.
That was from, let's see, we have in our 2 women production, which is La Chochara. We needed a full out military Jeep. So and it had to drive. It actually was driven on stage with soldiers in the back. And here you can see these little purple things. They will be your best friends.
Those are brilliant.
Jacks. They are so great. In fact, once you have them, you want to start taking them outside and moving parked cars into other places. But we never really did that. But for this, we got it turned out we couldn't get a real military Jeep for the amount of money that we wanted. So we got something that was close. And by getting real military tires and sort of making up the seats and doing the stenciling and painting, it actually looked great. And we had to put an electric motor in it to make it drivable. And there it is being driven during tech. And I don't think I have any pictures of it in action during the show, but that was another Jeep story.
So let's talk about, we've talked about a lot of operas and a lot of tragedies. Let's talk about a cheap, chintzy gag. Okay, so when we talk about golf carts, this is a 3-wheeler. All of the truck stuff and Jeep stuff that has been made from golf carts have been 4-wheel golf carts. They have a lot greater capacity. But for Animal Crackers at Skylight Opera, which I did with Jen Lyons and Amy Peter as my artisans, we needed an extra tight turning radius, which meant an extra small golf cart. So this is the golf cart in process from the side. We stripped it down to a pretty bare chassis. And then we started adding structure. They needed to stand on the backs of the fenders, the rear fenders over the golf cart wheels. They didn't really need to do that on the front. Plus, there's only one wheel in the front. The door structure we wanted to make sure was paintable and kind of loose and safari-like. So go ahead and advance. So we framed out the doors because this particular golf cart didn't really have any doors. It was a slide-in bench style seat. So this was just all plywood and poplar construction. And go ahead and advance. We started, I can't remember what we upholstered it in, but it wasn't this. I think this was just a dust cloth of some sort. This is just another view of the built-in seat that we installed. And advance again. Yep. And so this is how it turned out. We put a little orange safety flag that had wires, so it was always safe. A little grass skirt. We had bones in the wheel hubs. These 2 areas were standable. The cart, although you can't see it in this picture, had a little tiny Persian carpet as its backrest. It had 2 battery-operated headlights mounted on top of the bamboo frame. So this all got transferred into bamboo, which originally was conduit, and then we just lashed bamboo over the top of the conduit. A little bit of camo netting, and of course the kind of camo paint job and grass skirt on the front. You can't do a Groucho Marx driven vehicle without cow horns and a raccoon tail. And then what else? Is that the last picture of it? It might be the last picture. Yeah, I think that might be the last picture. So yeah, an interesting story. This guy, Norman Moses, Same guy who drove the truck for 110 in the shade, and now here he is 20 years later as Groucho Marx. And this was, I don't know, 15 years ago. So, but it had to do, you can see the stairs here, and this cart had to do donuts in the middle of the stage, with all of the Marx Brothers in some form riding this cart. We didn't get a picture of that. It was pretty frenetic. That's it. Yes, it was the Audrey 2 set of arms, the grabbing arms that you saw in the background when we were building that. Thanks for the Audrey question. Cool. So that's it. Any questions?
Do we have any final questions? We'll give everyone a moment in chat if they want to post their final questions. I did want to read a comment that Vincent had earlier that I thought was very nice. When you don't know a whole lot about something yourself, you have to surround yourself with people that do know a whole lot about it. And as this story proves, there's bound to be people in your adoptive community who are just as fascinated by your stuff as you are as theirs. I thought that was very nice.
I wanted to mention, since Lisa mentioned motorcycles, we had a barber of Seville that had a Vespa in it that was driven in, and while it was sitting on stage, the chorus is meant to take it apart and steal everything on it and leave a bare frame. And one enterprising person come back in act 2 and slowly over the course of the act put other mysterious junkyard parts that he brings in on a wheelbarrow back onto the frame and then drive it away. So this was an extraordinary project, and we were really lucky to have someone on the crew that was very excited about doing this. We did learn that Vespas don't have an inner frame. They simply are what they are. What you see is the frame, and so there's no way to steal parts off of it. So we did get a Vespa, and we also got an electric MORAD bike, and literally took all the parts off that MORAD, painted them all different colors and melted them and bashed them up so that they looked like junkyard parts, took our Vespa, cut it in half in order to make, and then actually welded pieces back in so that those pieces could fit onto the electric frame. So it showed up all shiny and red, and the chorus all stole all the shiny red parts, and the guy came with his wheelbarrow full of stuff and put all the junky parts back on. It was absolutely brilliant.
So we have a question about opera money is crazy, but have you ever had to justify spending any additional money beyond what was budgeted? Lori, take it away.
Yes. Often. For some reason, we're a company that wants to be proud of the fact that we can say no. And for some reason, in the decades that I've been there, I very rarely see it happen. Ultimately, they say yes, and we're stuck doing some really bizarre things that are really, really, really expensive. It happens, and then they get all mad because they're way over budget.
And from vehicles to animals, which is harder? Which is harder, the horse that you're dealing with in Carmen, or all of the Mercedes from the last Carmen?
Oh, they're so different. They're just so different. A
I
lot
have to
of
say, animals should have their own handlers,
they
and
have,
therefore they should not be props. That's what I have to say about live animals.
and you know, when I'm gone, that's probably what we're going to do. I just like animals, and so I've kind of dealt with them. Dogs always hang out in the prop room with me while they're waiting for their cues. I'm usually the one that, you know, gets to go to the other side of the stage that they'll run over, and I just like animals, so we've always kind of kept them. Um, but that'll probably change when I'm not there anymore.
So another interesting question about vehicles. What's our lead time on shows with vehicles? I can tell you that for the vehicles I've dealt with, for the opera vehicles I've dealt with, I've had more than a year of lead time. For the music theater vehicles I've dealt with, it's been a minimum of 6 months lead time. Until this year, when I had 6 weeks of lead time. And this is what you get with 6 weeks of lead time for a vehicle. So that's what you get.
It varies. It same with everything else. It varies how much lead time you get. Um, so years ago, the design team wanted.
Oh, how do you determine that the stage can handle the weight of the cars? Well, I mean, we've never really had much of an issue with that. I mean, our stages in the opera world are engineered for a lot of weight.
We have a
Um,
double floor. We
yeah,
sometimes put an additional layer of plywood down when we have, but it's usually the scenery that's too heavy,
right,
not the
yeah,
vehicles.
right. But for theaters that have traps, that's a very serious question. And if you know, the first thing that I would do in that case is enlist the technical director, the production director, and the facilities director and say, unless you plan on installing an engineered floor, you should, you know, give me engineering specs that we have to conform to from a weight standpoint. You cannot take that liability on in the prop shop. So if you're working with a stage that has traps in it, you need an engineer to sign off on how much weight those traps can bear reasonably. And you can't do that without your TD, your PM, and your facilities director. Yeah. What else? What else do you guys want to know?
Well, that might be it then. We might be giving it back to Kat.
Camera wasn't working. Thank you both so much. That was incredibly informative. Thank you all for attending this evening. I hope it was fun and informative. Stay tuned to your email and social medias for more spam announcements that are coming soon. If you're interested in joining spam and are a working prop manager in nonprofit, opera, or children's theater, or are an educator who teaches prop classes, please visit our website or click the link in the chat to fill out our membership form. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Links are in the chat. Spaminar is produced by the Society of Prop Managers with special thanks to SPM members Patrick Drone, Freed, Ben Homan, Nikki Claus, Jen McClure, Amy Peter, Sarah Pooh, Karen Robbie, my apologies, Vance, and Helen Strakes. Thank you so much for attending, and once again, please keep your suggestions for future Spaminars coming. We want to know what you want to learn about. Prop on, and we will see you next time. Thank you, everyone, once again.